We're broadcasting.
All right. Good morning, everybody. Welcome, and we're so glad you're joining us for kind of a launch of a new series of webinars sponsored by SCbio to really focus particularly on this COVID-19 crisis and what some amazing South Carolina life science companies are doing to combat it directly and provide solutions. And expect this to continue in the weeks ahead. We're excited to be part of it, needless to say. I want to, make it clear just on the front end, we're all in this together. It's impacting all of our lives very directly. And, but in particular, what we want to hear is from some of the experts, from some of the clinicians, the scientists, and from some of our great life science industry leaders who are really focusing on the facts and what we can do to move more quickly to solutions around this crisis that we're in. So with that, I'm not going to delay getting right to our panelists. And we have a couple of stars this morning that are going to be talking to you, starting with Dr. Bill Massey. He is the chief scientific for Vikor Scientific, but he has also got an incredible signature career, neuropharmacologist, pharmacogeneticist, and a real expert in infectious disease areas. So Bill, we're excited to have you not only share some of the unique things that Vikor Scientific is doing to tackle COVID-19 with the unique COVID-19 test kit that y'all have readily available and are shipping right now, meeting perhaps one of the greatest needs. And we have to know who has this virus around the country. But I think also you just given us kind of a high-level overview from a clinical perspective on COVID-19.
Yeah, thanks, Sam, for having me. I do get a lot of questions about this, as you can probably imagine, every day, pretty much. I wanted to do a quick introduction of what we do here at Vikor. At Vikor, we're a clinical diagnostic lab that specializes in testing of DNA, particularly testing of DNA of infectious pathogens to help physicians to identify and diagnose a particular pathogen, and also resistance genes that pathogen may carry. That helps us to recommend antibiotic and antiviral treatments. We do test for a large number of bacterial and viral pathogens, and we just started last week testing SARS-CoV-2, which is the virus that causes COVID-19, the current coronavirus pandemic. In fact, we've been doing at least 50 the past 2 days every night, and we're detecting 50 or so every night. We're doing probably 350 a night as far as the number of COVID tests we're doing, and that's going to increase rapidly because we just now have been able to ship out the test kits to everyone. What we do is very accurate. We use the DNA to detect the actual bacteria. We actually test for 3 different genes of SARS-CoV-2 to give a very accurate diagnostic. And then we also provide expert guidance. We have a staff that works for me. They're clinicians and pharmacists that provide treatment recommendations. So I'll just get right to it. The coronavirus disease 2019, I was going to call it COVID-19. It was caused by the novel coronavirus that we first heard about in the city of Wuhan, China in late December. This will allow us to slow the spread and help provide relief for hospitals and other resources that are being incredibly strained at this time. Social distancing probably will not reduce the overall spread over time, but if we can reduce the rate of spread, then we can help to make sure that we have the resources available for those that are sick. And then if we can do this, we can reduce the R0 to less than 1, then the disease will subside. In other words, if one person infects less than one other person, it will subside. The other way in which that will happen is through what we call herd immunity, when enough people have actually caught the infection, even maybe they're asymptomatic, but they develop antibodies and immunity to it in the future. So that will also prevent and reduce the R0 factor. In fact, the fact that this is novel and no one has any immunity to it has been one of the primary drivers of transmission. Now, one of the things that's important to know is that we don't really know how many people have been infected. And most likely, the more people that we test, the more people we're going to find out were infected. And in order to have a confirmed diagnosis, you have to have a positive testing. So testing for the virus, we've been limited due to a lack of available testing capacity. We've run out of reagents, we've run out of extraction reagents, things like that, swabs. But we are getting on track, and testing capacity is going to increase rapidly in the next couple of weeks. And as that happens, we'll find out that more and more people have been infected. One of the reasons why we're probably underestimating the number of people that are infected is that it seems a lot of people don't even have symptoms. In other words, they've had the disease, have had the disease, and would not know it because they didn't have any symptoms. So until we do widespread testing of people that are asymptomatic, we won't know how widespread the disease actually is currently. It's strongly suspected that these asymptomatic people can transmit the disease to others. Now, it's strongly suspected because we've been able to test asymptomatic people, and we learned that they have a pretty high viral load. And if they're shedding virus, that means that virus can be shed and picked up by others. Now, all that sounds pretty bleak, but the good news is that there might be some treatments on the horizon, and social distancing combined with treatment can have a huge impact on how widespread the pandemic becomes. It seems that social distancing is working and limiting spread in China and in South Korea, where they've done the most testing. And it also appears now that in Italy, the number of cases are beginning to level off. It's going to take some time to develop a vaccine. That's not going to happen for at least 12 to 18 months. But there are existing drugs that are currently available that appear to have efficacy in COVID-19. Now I'm going to say that appear to have efficacy, and I want to talk about some of the actual data in a moment. One of them is an old drug, chloroquine, and a hydroxy analog of it called hydroxychloroquine. So hydroxychloroquine, and then a combination of hydroxychloroquine plus azithromycin, and an antiviral drug that's in development that's not currently marketed called remdesivir, appear to have great promise. And I'm going to talk about each of these individually. Now, these are far from being proven because we haven't done the widespread gold standard trials that would be required by FDA to approve a drug. But in anecdotal cases, these drugs have helped patients, and in some clinical trials have helped patients, and sometimes dramatically. So again, an effective treatment may be the best weapon against this epidemic in lieu of a working vaccine, which is some time away. So first I want to talk about hydroxychloroquine with or without azithromycin. During the previous coronavirus epidemic, SARS, or severe acute respiratory syndrome in 2003, chloroquine was shown to inhibit viral replication in the test tube in vitro. And we've also now known that chloroquine and hydroxychloroquine have been shown to inhibit the current coronavirus, SARS-CoV-2, in vitro as well. And this is very good, but in vitro is very different than in vivo or in the clinic. So I'll talk about the clinical evidence next. Now, chloroquine and hydroxychloroquine have broad spectrum antiviral activities. We know why they do that now. We know that they increase endosomal pH, and that's required for virus cell fusion so that the virus can actually infect the cell, as well as it interferes with glycosylation of these receptors for SARS-CoV. Now, multiple clinical studies have now shown that chloroquine, hydroxychloroquine, and hydroxychloroquine plus azithromycin appear to be effective in treating COVID-19. The good thing about it is that these drugs are widely available for the treatment of malaria and for rheumatoid arthritis and lupus, and they're relatively inexpensive. So here's the evidence. There have been a number of clinical studies conducted in China that have shown chloroquine, the older drug, to be effective in treating COVID-19. And then based on these studies, the Chinese government has already recommended that chloroquine be recommended for treatment of COVID-19. One of these studies was a multi-center study. There were like 10 different hospitals in Wuhan, China, that evaluated more than 100 COVID-19 patients. They showed that it was effective in several different endpoints of the study. exacerbation of pneumonia. And then they did CT scans and radiographs of lungs to show the course of pneumonia. It was effective in improving those lung imaging findings. And then in promoting a virus negative conversion, which means actually getting rid of the virus and shortening the course of the disease. So again, one of the reasons might be is that in addition to the antiviral effects of chloroquine and hydroxychloroquine, the anti-inflammatory effects of hydroxychloroquine may account for that efficacy in treating the pneumonia, because one of the issues with pneumonia is actually your body's defense to the virus. It's called a cytokine storm. It's an immune reaction, which can actually cause more fluid to develop in your lungs. More exciting, I think, than even some of the chloroquine studies out of China have been the hydroxychloroquine plus azithromycin study conducted in the south of France. In this study, they showed that hydroxychloroquine, which is actually less toxic than chloroquine, and you can get higher doses of it, was effective against COVID-19. So what they did, they looked at 36 patients, actually looked at 42, but 6 of the patients didn't make it to the end of the study for different reasons. But 36 patients did. And when they evaluated those 36 patients, they found that in the 14 that were given hydroxychloroquine, they gave 6 combination of hydroxychloroquine plus azithromycin, and those 6 patients were more severely ill. They gave them azithromycin to try to prevent secondary bacterial pneumonia. But azithromycin also has antiviral properties in vitro. And in the other control group, they treated them as usual, which is supportive care. So anyway, after 6 days, every day they tested to see if there was any virus and what the virus loads were in these patients. So after 6 days, on the 6th day of treatment, no virus was detected in any of the 6 patients that were treated receiving hydroxychloroquine plus azithromycin, 6 out of 6. And in 8 out of the 14, or 57% of the patients that received hydroxychloroquine alone, there was no detected virus. Now that's in contrast to only 2 out of 16, or 12.5% of patients who received neither drug. In other words, 5 times as many people who were treated showed no virus detected at day 6 than when treated with normal supportive care. So that is very impressive. Now, there's a lot of limitations to this study. It wasn't randomized. There are a lot of things that we could criticize the study for, but it was significant enough for the authors to recommend consideration of treatment with hydroxychloroquine plus azithromycin in COVID-19 infections. In fact, this morning, a group of doctors out of New Jersey signed a statement saying that they also support the use of hydroxychloroquine plus azithromycin. And we'll get more data on this from New York, which they're giving out many, many doses now. And again, it won't be a controlled study, but we will find out if people start to improve. In some of these cases, they improve within 24 hours. So we will have good anecdotal data. And when you're in a crisis, you can't always adhere to the same standards that you do with evidence that you do when you're not in a crisis. Another drug which appears to have great promise is remdesivir. It's an experimental antiviral that inhibits RNA synthesis. In other words, it appears to work in a large number of viruses that are coronavirus related. It's originally developed for Ebola, but we've shown in vitro that it has activity against SARS-CoV-2. Just anecdotally, one of the initial patients in Washington State was really seriously ill and on the death's door, and was given remdesivir, and the next day their fever broke and they were doing much better. So there's a lot of anecdotal data. It's currently being studied in some large clinical trials, but we won't get those results until April. The manufacturer, Gilead, it makes remdesivir. They were making it and giving it available. Since it's not approved for use by FDA, they were having to give it away under compassionate use program. But because of overwhelming demand, the other day they had to suspend that program. But they are increasing production, and the plans are to expand compassionate use very quickly. Anyway, that's the end of my presentation, and I want to answer questions that you may have. And anyway, I've also provided this slide deck to SCbio and the actual papers. Most of them are preprints, but the papers that are being published that were referenced in this presentation are also available. Thank you.
Thanks, Bill. We really appreciate that. Your expertise is clear, and it's encouraging to see that there are a number of existing drugs that appear to be effective in combating the virus and helping patients survive. It's a good segue. We have some great questions coming in, but because our time is so limited, I want to make sure we get straight to Lou Kennedy at Nephron. And I think one of the great segues of what you were sharing is Nephron Pharmaceuticals, which is a South Carolina powerhouse with global implications. Targeted respiratory therapies has been a core value proposition of theirs for a long time. And Lou, I know that y'all are in the process of introducing and validating new production lines to ensure that you have maximum capacity with your very efficacious therapies. And you're also doing unique things, you know, following the puck, if you will, to even going straight into hand sanitizer production just to help alleviate some short-term issues and to alleviate spread. So let me turn it over to our actually board chair of SCbio and also the owner and president of Nephron Pharmaceuticals, Lou Kennedy.
Thank you, Sam. We are very, very busy here. We are, as you would imagine, considered an essential service, and so we've asked everyone to show up, and that includes 860 teachers that are part of our part-time educator program. And because they're, you know, away from school, it's just been critical to getting so much done. So let me tell you, we make albuterol, ipratropium, racemic epinephrine, budesonide, and saline in a 22-year-old part of our business. And I can tell you that normally we ship around 75 to 85 million doses per month. And of course, it increases during cold, cough, allergy season. Well, as of yesterday, in the month of March, we've already shipped 167 million with orders pouring in last night and this morning. So I don't know the new number. So we originally announced literally only 2 weeks ago that we had 4 months supply in inventory, and we were comfortable with that number. Well, as you might imagine, with us more than doubling what we sold last month, that's eating into the back stock. So that leads me to what we are doing. At the end of this call, I have an 11 o'clock Eastern time call scheduled with FDA. They've been reviewing documents for our new lines that we installed in the last quarter of 2019, and we're hopeful that they're going to let us bring those up and be able to manufacture more albuterol and the other products that I mentioned. In addition to that, we've also ramped up production of, and I've got one right here. Excuse me 1 second, but we're making these are the bottles of saline and sterile water. So, because we've been told by many hospitals they expect saline bags to be in short supply. So we're asking the agency to let us go ahead and do this size container that's 50, 100 ml, 250, and 500 ml. We're trying to get those so that we can help with any potential shortage in saline and sterile water for injection. So we're quite busy. I think you should know that we're one of only 2 companies in the U.S. that we represent 98% of the market of albuterol and ipratropium, these nebulizer solutions. About 2% comes from Teva and 2 Indian companies. Both of them are keeping their meds in their own countries to give to their own. Now, of the 2 companies that manufacture, we are both located, and many of you know this, in South Carolina. We're 17 miles apart on I-77 here in the Columbia area. We are privately owned. The other company is owned by Wuhan Human Well, and they have indicated that they are not shipping any back to China, but we're watching that very carefully because we know we're already pushing our machines to max capacity. And on a normal day, we get about 97, 98% efficiency on our machines. We're asking folks to, and giving prizes for quicker changeover times. We are pushing those machines. We're hoping today to get word that we'll be allowed to ramp up the recently installed machines just to keep up with supply and make sure that we do not have a shortage of this. But I'm telling you, I just got word late last night that not only are our respiratory meds critical, but I've been receiving calls from Kaiser and some of the other big IDNs where they're asking me, will I be able to provide more fentanyl, norepinephrine, and some of our sterile injectable drugs. So lucky for us, DEA reached out 2 days ago to approve a new allotment of fentanyl API or active pharmaceutical ingredient. So we're also trying to ramp that side of our business up to be able to meet demand. And those are also in record number. And I'm telling you, what we have been doing, and it's a new normal, is we are checking temperatures at the door, which takes us quite a while to get everybody in on shift change and out. We are bringing in extra food trucks to make sure we have enough food for our folks. We stood up a child care facility last Monday, and we've got single parents here that we need to show up for work. And so we're actually doing a very small but a critical service, and that's offering child care. And in order to help our friends in the restaurant business, I've been ordering catering in addition to the food trucks and trying to feed different departments every day so that we can give some of these local restaurants business, at least through catering. So it's a new normal. We're doing all these things and are so very proud of the employees when they could arguably be very scared about showing up. What you sense when you walk through the building and you're watching people work, there's a huge sense of patriotism and support and pride. I would even say that we are one of 2 companies providing these essential medicines to treat symptoms. I think people feel like proud to be American. And one thing I said on a chamber call earlier is I hope we see this spirit, not just in times of crisis, but this sense of community and support that will last much longer than this virus, for us to combat and try and get these numbers down. And that's really all I have to report, Sam.
Thanks, Lou. And as usual, Nephron moving very creatively in a number of ways to be effective and impactful during this crisis. Thank you for that. We're really proud of both Nephron and Vikor Scientific and what they're doing.
And we've ramped up. We're trying to do 24/7 formulation of hand sanitizer as well. We've ordered in as many supplies as we can get from everywhere we can search for it. And so we are going to make, as long as we can, make hand sanitizer and ship that out to the hospitals and, urgent care. We're trying to start with the clinicians first. We started with our Nephron employees, and then hospitals and clinics, medical caregivers first, and then we'll make it available if we have any left past that.
Which is meeting a huge need. And, one of the questions I would briefly ask both of you on that front. So you're trying to provide needed safety supplies, if you will, through the hand sanitizer. There are shortages in everything from swabs to respirators to face masks to PPE. Luckily, we'll have some other stories coming out pretty soon of South Carolina companies that are working to meet those needs. They're pivoting their production capabilities to get into these product areas. Bill, how are y'all doing in terms of, access to everything from reagents to swabs that are needed for the test kits that you're producing?
Well, so far we're okay. We're of course scrambling to make sure that we don't run out of reagents, but at the present time we're doing fine. Yeah, we have quite a bit of testing capacity.
And are you seeing
and Sam,
Yeah.
I'll just add, it's not just the reagents for this test. We make all sterile drugs, and we too have tried to secure as many supplies as we can because we have to test all our batches for sterility. And so early on, several weeks back, we started working on PPE, reagents, necessary testing supplies, because it's just far and wide, the shortage. It's not just the initial testing, it's also the work that we do in our microbiology and chemistry labs.
And it seems it's going to be interesting that at this point in time, whether we like it or not, the virus is still spiking dramatically. Some of that may be attributable to a lot more people being tested, but to see New Orleans, for instance, as the fastest growing hotspot in the world right now for it, there could be some real shortages in other areas. One layman question, Bill, I'd like to put out to you, because I've been getting this from a number of people. When this started, and not to be alarmist in any way, it was sort of indicated the hope that most people will do fine if they develop the virus, and that it's mainly the older population with comorbidities, other diseases, conditions that really have a legitimate basis for possible increase in deaths or permanent lung damage. It's been interesting to see more and more young adults are contracting this virus, and it is hitting some of them very dramatically. And there have been deaths of otherwise relatively healthy folks in their 40s and 50s. That leads me to at least believe we can't let our guard down yet. And I'm curious, is that possibly tied to some predisposition genetically to certain pathogens that you just can't predict?
We just don't know enough about it at the moment. So you're right. It does affect some people who seem to be relatively healthy. There may be some underlying genetic, immunocompromise that we don't know about, IgG production, things like that. But bottom line is that it appears that most people, the majority of people, will be asymptomatic or have such mild symptoms that they do not seek out medical care. That proportion of people that do develop a more serious illness, there's a smaller subset of them that will end up with a serious ICU, needy illness. Of those people, almost, the numbers I got out of New York are like 95% of people that are being hospitalized for this have some sort of underlying precondition. Immunocompromise, they're on chemotherapy for cancer, hypertension, diabetes, other things that are known to make you immunocompromised. But the bottom line is that we just don't know enough about this. It's so novel that we'll be learning more and more about what it is specifically that places someone at greater risk of serious disease. And I expect that to happen very quickly. With the more information that comes in, with the more people that come down with the disease.
Listen, we're on our final minute and wrapping up, and I'd like to ask if either you, Bill, or Lou, or Rob Godfrey, who works closely with Lou and keeps up a lot with the policy issues that are going on around this right now, would like to offer any final perspectives to our participants before we close.
Thanks, Sam. Lou had to step away to get on another call, but we appreciate all the work y'all are doing as advocates for the growing life sciences industry here in South Carolina. And we're just proud of the work that we're able to do on the front lines of the response to coronavirus, to COVID-19. And, for anything that you guys need or any questions any of you may have, please don't hesitate to reach out to us directly. We're happy to help you with any of those questions.
We'll do it. And whether it's been sending in requests for some of your saline, for other companies in the state, I think what's been great to see is just everybody rallying together and us trying to serve in kind of a coordination role in the supply chain to identify where supplies are and get them to the right places. Companies like Nephron and Vikor have been bending over backwards to help their neighbors. So that's been terrific. Bill, any final words?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And for the latest about Nephron news, just follow us on Facebook and Twitter. We're communicating every day and want to hear from y'all.
Terrific. Bill, any final words from Vikor Scientific?
Just know that we're dedicated to helping the public during this time. We will be ramping up testing rapidly. We sent out 100,000 test kits last week. So we expect there to be a huge influx of testing coming in. And so far, the testing has been in line with national averages. About 5% are positive for COVID-19, but we also detect other respiratory pathogens. And so we also provide treatment recommendations. And so if anybody wants to talk to me about hydroxychloroquine, the doses, the durations, and azithromycin, I get quite a few of those calls, you can probably imagine, Sam. just give me a call at Vikor. They'll route you to me, and also my cell phone number was on the slide deck. So,
And Bill, I've been aware that some hospital CEOs have been reaching out to Vikor just in the last couple of days based on having a number of patients in quarantine inside their hospitals waiting for long turnarounds. It's impressive, y'all's 12 to 14 hour turnarounds, and that you're also testing for 49 other pathogens, which helps give a clinician much better treatment information relative to what the patient is suffering from, because it could be another infection involved as well. So very cool stuff. And, lastly, folks will please keep tuning in to the scbio.org website. Our coronavirus portal is right on the masthead. Click it. It's getting loaded every day with real-time information, both from our national affiliates, from companies like Nephron and Vikor, and a lot of other useful information and links. So we're all in it together. Let's stay resilient. We're going to find some silver linings in this and make it through. So thank you everybody for participating. Stay tuned for the next webinars. Bye-bye.
Thank you.